Welcome to Module 2. I'm Stacey Tellis, and today we're tackling how we can build learning environments where every single student can thrive no matter their background, abilities, or experiences. Now, whether you're tuning in from the Caribbean or somewhere else around the globe, this is a conversation that matters to all of us. Here in the Caribbean, we're blessed with incredible diversity, a vibrant mix of cultures and languages and histories, but that same diversity means our classrooms are filled with students who have different needs, perspectives, and learning styles. So, how do we create a space that works for everyone? Today, we're going to break it down in three key areas: how we can build inclusive learning environments, the barriers that hold us back, and how the language we use can shape a more inclusive classroom. When we talk about building inclusive learning environments, we're not just talking about offering extra help to students with challenges. It's about creating a space where every student feels supported, respected, and able to work in ways that work best for them, whether that student is quiet or always ready to share. In the Caribbean, we're no stranger to diversity. Every classroom is filled with students from different cultural backgrounds. As educators, it's our responsibility to embrace the diversity as a strength and not a challenge. But of course, that's said than done. And it starts with us teachers, administrators, and everyone involved in education taking a good hard look at our own assumptions. Do we sometimes, even without realizing it, hold certain biases that we unconsciously favor one group over another? If we want to create inclusive spaces, inclusion can be about the small things. For example, addressing students by their names, using gender neutral pronouns. These small shifts can make a big difference. And there is content we teach. Are we bringing stories that resonate with Caribbean experiences, whether it's a cricket match analogy for a piece of folklore? We want to have relevant and inclusive content for students. But as we know, creating this type of environment comes with challenges. Now, the idea of creating inclusive spaces sounds great on paper, but in practice, we know it's not always easy. There's real barriers that make it difficult for educators to build the kind of learning environments we're talking about. So, what are these kinds of barriers? One major obstacle is our own mindset. Often, without realizing it, we have a bias, and we look at a student who may be struggling and think maybe they're just not cut out for this. But what if they need us to believe in them just a little bit more? In the Caribbean, this shows up in different ways. Sometimes non native English speakers may be seen as less academically capable simply because their language skills don't match a standard, or students from low income backgrounds may be written off as not having the tools they need to succeed. And it's up to us to meet them where they are. Another barrier, the culture of the classroom itself, whether it's the environment. Imagine a classroom where a student feels judged or constantly overlooked. It's a recipe for disengagement and lack of motivation. So, str- um, let's turn to another crucial piece of the puzzle: the language we use in the classroom. Language is powerful. It can open doors, but it can also close them. In the context of inclusive education, the way that we use language matters. In a diverse region like the Caribbean, where languages and dialects are so richly woven into everyday lives, this issue becomes even more important. When we talk about inclusive language, we mean words that don't carry barriers or stereotypes. In the classroom, for example, using phrases that equally honor both men and women, avoiding expressions that could alienate certain groups is key to creating an inclusive atmosphere. Take something as simple as how we address our students. When we say they instead of assuming he or she, we're acknowledging that not everyone fits in neat gender boxes. This is especially important in higher education where students are finding their voices and navigating questions of identity and belonging. In the Caribbean, we always being great at connecting with each other through our shared stories, our experiences, our communities. By being mindful of the language we use in education, we can make sure that every student feels seen, heard, and valued. How do we put all of this into practice? So, there are some practical tips for educators in the Caribbean. Um, so that we can create more inclusive learning environments. Celebrating diversity in our lesson plans. Don't just sprinkle in diverse examples, make them central to your teaching. Include stories, historical figures, achievements from across the Caribbean so students can see themselves reflected in the content. Take a step back and reflect on any preconceived ideas you might have about students based on their background, appearance, or even the way they speak. Every student deserves to be seen for their potential and not their limitations. Set the tone early. Let your students know that bullying, teasing, disrespect forgetfulness will not be allowed. Encourage conversations for students to share their thoughts and feelings. Be conscious of the words you use, especially when addressing gender or cultural issues. Gender neutral language. Listen and learn from your students. Often, the best way to know how to be more inclusive is to ask your students, encourage them to share their perspectives and needs. Remember, inclusion is a journey, not just one that requires constant learning and adapting. Creating an inclusive environment isn't something that we do just once and forget about it. It requires commitment. It requires us to look closely at ourselves and our practices. As educators, we have the opportunity to build a classroom to celebrate diverse cultures that surround us every day. Thank you for joining me today to talk about inclusive learning environments. Let's keep pushing forward, learning from each other, ensuring that every student feels valued, empowered, and ready to succeed.